A warm welcome to the 2022 edition of Sightgeist, the Saxony magazine. Like before, we have compiled news and stories from Saxony. Once again, there have been many reasons to celebrate this year, and we would like you to be part of the celebrations. Here's what you will find in today's edition. This year, the 300th birthday of the Venetian painter Bernardo Bellotto has been celebrated in Saxony. In 1747, Bellotto received a call from the Saxon court and moved to Dresden. Frederick Augustus II, who also ruled Poland as Augustus III, was a big fan of his work and offered him a royal salary. Calling himself Canaletto now, like his uncle before him, he was already famous for his vedutas, realistic depictions of cities and landscapes. Like no other painter, Canaletto shaped the image of Dresden, which is still on our minds today. He also created vedutas of Venice, Florence, Rome, Vienna, Munich, Warsaw, and Pirna. Pirna? Where's Pirna? Pirna is a small but very beautiful town, also known as the gateway to the Saxon-Switzerland National Park. Located on the Elbe River, it can be easily reached from Dresden on a commuter train, a steamboat, or even on a bicycle. Pirna hasn't changed very much over the past few centuries and still looks very much like on the vedutas from the 18th century of Bernardo Bellotto, known as Canaletto. The town is still dominated by the former Sonnenstein fortress, which was of strategic importance during the Venetian painters' times, and St. Mary's Church, one of the most beautiful churches in Saxony. Between 1753 and 1755, Canaletto created 11 vedutas of Pirna. In 1753, the Saxon chief minister, Count Heinrich von Bühl, gave the order that Canaletto should be assisted by the Pirna authorities in any possible way and that all his wishes should be fulfilled. No questions asked. But how come that this royal court painter, a man from Venice who hardly spoke any German, and who had only depicted large cities like Venice, Florence and Rome before that, suddenly turned his attention to a small Saxon town? To find out, I'm going to meet an old acquaintance of mine, Ulrike Schleicher, who for many years worked for the Pirna tourist office and who has recently retired, obviously at the age of 35. Hello Ulrike, nice to see you again.
Hello Wolfgang.
Ulrike, how come that Canaletto painted Pirna?
We don't know it exactly. I think the Saxon court wants to see places in its area protected by fortresses. And the fortress of Sonnenstein we can see on each of the 11 or 12 paintings about and around Pirna.
Ah, interesting. You said 11 or 12. Isn't
Yes.
it always official that he painted 11 vedutas?
Everything it's told about 11 paintings, but there is a 12th too. It's very green, and Pirna is to seen quite far in the far.
What do you like about Canaletto's paintings?
I like the exactly painting. It's like a photograph. We can see the normal life in time of Baroque. We can see people, we can see their professions, we can see how the buildings looked in this time.
How did Canaletto manage to be so exact on his paintings?
He had a very special tool. It's called camera obscura.
And you said it's a camera, but there was no film at the time, obviously.
Yeah.
What did it do?
Everything which don't move, he can catch so. And the clouds and the shadows and the people and the animals were decorated later.
Oh, he added them to the paintings.
Yes, indeed.
Ulrike, would you take me to some of the places from where Canaletto painted his vedutas?
Yes, it's my pleasure. Please come with me.
Let's go.
Now I have to go to change.
You'll never change.
Oh, you will see. Bye.
See you. Some years ago, Ulrike had a brilliant idea. Since the market square of Pirna looks virtually the same as in Canaletto's times, why not reenact the setting of his most famous Veduta of Pirna? What started as a one-off event has become an annual tradition. Every year in spring, citizens of Pirna put on their historic costumes and place their characters in exactly the same spots as on Canaletto's painting. Afterwards, children do the same thing. Naturally, Ulrike is part of it. Let's follow her and go back to the year 1753. And here's Canaletto's famous Veduta. So you might think, after all, we're in the Canaletto house, a most distinctive house here on Pirna's Market Square, going back to the late Gothic times. But actually, this is a masterful copy painted by famous artist Christoph Wetzel, who also recreated the paintings under the dome of the Frauenkirche, or Church of Our Lady in Dresden. Here's a suggestion. When you're in Dresden, go and see the original paintings of Canaletto in the fabulous Old Masters Picture Gallery. Then come to Pirna and find out why this town was equally inspiring to him as Dresden. In Canaletto's times, Vedutas were purchased by travelers as souvenirs. They were later replaced by postcards and photographs. Today, there are new technologies available to you and me to create our own memories. I have created mine, so come and create yours. After the death of Frederick Augustus II and his influential First Minister Count Brühl in 1763, Canaletto fell out of favor. He was forced to work as a teacher at the newly founded Dresden Art Academy with drastically reduced salary. This certainly wasn't fun for him and his students, since he still had not learned much German. So he left for Warsaw, where the new Polish king still enjoyed his kind of art, which by then was seen as outdated in Saxony. And yet, his works still shine on, 300 years after he was born. Saxony was often called the motherland of the Reformation, which refers to the great reformer Martin Luther. But more than 100 years before him, Jan Hus had already demanded reforms of the church, which he eventually paid for with his life. After the 30 Years' War and the Counter-Reformation in what is today's Czech Republic, many of his later-day followers fled to Saxony, where some of them formed the Moravian Church. But I am not the best person to tell the story.
Welcome. My name is Erdmute Frank and I serve in Herrnhut as a minister for guests. I am happy to be with you here in the Zinzendorf Castle. Count Nikolaus Ludwig of Zinzendorf became in 1721 the owner of this estate, and he gave room for refugees who came from Moravia to find a place where they could live their faith in freedom. Count Zinzendorf did not spend much time here on this estate. He lived mainly in Dresden and later in Herrnhut and overseas. We are here on the God's Acre of the Moravian Church in Herrnhut. We have here 6,000 graves with people who were born all over the world. You can also see that everything looks very simple. The stones are laying flat in the fields like seeds in an acre, like sleepers in a big bedroom. And so you can imagine that here the congregation who is gathered around God in heaven is also still in the memory present here on earth. And here is the gravestone of Christian David. He was a man who cut down the first tree for the building of Herrnhut on June 17th in 1722. We are now here in the town museum, which shows objects from the past and the present of the town of Herrnhut. The name of Herrnhut has a very special meaning. When the settlers came here, they named this place under the Lord's watch. And they also wanted to be on the watch for the Lord. In this museum we find original paintings and artwork of the early Herrnhuters, which are very interesting. We are in the Herrnhut Moravian Church. Our congregation loves to call this room the living room of the congregation. Here we share everything what is part of the congregational life. We celebrate baptisms and weddings, confirmation and Sunday worships. We meet for singing and concerts. We have a very rich life and a very active congregation here in Herrnhut, and we love to welcome guests who celebrate with us. Two things are typically for our churches. One is the color white. It reminds us of the resurrection of Jesus Christ and makes the church bright and light. It gives attention to the decoration which we have, because Count Zinzendorf said, when people are in the church, then the decoration is perfect. And the other is that we have here a plain table, no altar, no baptismal font, but this table around which we share everything what is part of our church life. We are here in the exhibition From Herrnhut into the World, and you can see here everything what is part of the development of the Moravian daily texts or daily watchwords. We have a bowl out of which we draw the Old Testament texts, and then the manuscripts are produced, and the entire process takes about 3 years until everyone has it in his or her own language to read. The Moravian daily texts appear right now in about 60 languages worldwide. In 1732, the first two missionaries left Herrnhut to go to the island of St. Thomas in the Caribbean region. Missionaries went from then on to many countries all over the world, to South Africa, to Eastern Africa, to the Himalayas, even to Alaska, Labrador and Greenland. And wherever they went, they helped people to take care of their health. They built hospitals and they built schools. So education was one of the really important things. And then when people became curious, they started to preach and they started to proclaim the gospel. Many missionaries brought back objects from the regions where they served, and these objects are presented here in the Ethnographic Museum. Herrnhut is known to many people because of the Moravian Church, but as important and as famous is also the Herrnhut star, Moravian star. Moravian stars are used all over the world, in churches, in houses, in families and in cities. And they are a symbol for Jesus Christ, who is the light of the world. This stone reminds us of the time from 1933 to 1945. It's a time when the Nazi government was ruling in Germany and bringing a lot of destruction all over the world. You can see that in the symbol of the brokenness of this stone. And the Herrnhuters also experienced this brokenness because on May 9th in 1945, the Soviet army destroyed the entire center of Herrnhut. And it was a very hard call for the people who lived here, and they were trying to struggle and to find an answer. God, why do you do that to us? It says here, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, and do not lead us into temptation. Count Nikolaus Ludwig of Zinzendorf is buried here. That these graves are raised does not mean that it was important for Zinzendorf to be a count. People long after his death did that. I believe when he could, he would make sure that his stones are again fled to the earth, because it was very important to him to be brother among brothers and sisters.
"300 years after the town was founded, Herrnhut is still a special place, thanks to the ongoing influence of the Moravian Church. The region of Upper Lusatia has always been known for religious tolerance and variety, something that is still of high value today, since people are still forced to leave their homes for their convictions." Until World War II, Saxony was the richest and most industrialized region of Germany. The early factories were spinning mills, with the oldest one erected in Chemnitz in 1799. Saxony's third largest city also became the cradle of German engineering, when machines were constructed to fulfill the demand from the multiplying factories. Apart from Chemnitz, the Ore Mountains, the Upper Lusatia and the Vogtland regions developed major textile industries. And then there's the so-called textile triangle in West Saxony between the towns of Meerane, Glauchau and Crimmitschau. At the end of the 19th century, Crimmitschau had the highest number of millionaires in the German Empire in relation to the size of its population. There were more than 60 textile factories in the town, and their owners could afford to build very beautiful houses for themselves. which still bear witness to that golden age. Most of these houses can be found in the Westberg area of the town, the Western Hill. There's a good reason for this. At that time, Grimmitschau was also known as the town of 100 chimneys. At the Westberg area, the factory owners were safe from the smoke. The employees were less lucky. Working conditions were harsh. And in 1903, almost 8,000 workers went on strike for 21 weeks, demanding that their work time would be reduced to 10 hours per day. The strike got much attention, even beyond Germany. But the demands of the workers were only fulfilled in 1908, when the German parliament passed a new law. The workers of the Tuchfabrik Gebrüder Pfau, meaning Pfau Brothers Cloth Mill, also participated in the strike. It had been founded in 1885 and it remained family-owned until 1972, when it was nationalized by the communist government of East Germany. German reunification hit the Saxon textile industry hard, and production at this factory ceased in 1990. Declared a monument, it has been developed into a museum, which is unique in Central Europe. I'm going to meet Philip Cardell, the director of the museum, who will tell me all about it and show me around this fascinating place. Hello, Philip.
Hello, Wolfgang.
What's so special about this place?
The special thing with our factory is a fully integrated factory. That means you can follow the whole process of producing cloth, beginning with the raw material, the wool, up to the ready-made cloth. And what's more, you can follow this process on original machines. And many of these machines are still running. That's really unique in Germany. And they have an age of about 80, 90 or even 100 years and beyond.
That sounds wonderful. Let's go and have a look at it.
This is our steam engine.
And this was used as a power source right from the beginning?
Not really right from the beginning. At the very beginning, the energy came from a grain mill, so from a water wheel. You have to imagine the raw material, the wool, is delivered in very solid blocks and it has to be torn up.
And this seems to be different kinds of wool.
Yes, that's right. These are three different kinds of raw materials. So this is cotton, this is wool, and this is synthetics, so artificial fibers. So this is one of our carding machines. On these machines, the fibers are laid parallel, and they form a kind of a fleece. You can see it very well on these rollers. And at the end of the machine, we get our pre-yarn. So as you can see, it's very soft. You can't yet use it. It's too soft. So this is our spinning hall with our self-acting spinning machines, and they have more than 2,000 spindles.
Like these, right?
Yes, right.
They're made from paper mache.
Yes, we have thousands and thousands of these kind of spools.
I know we're only in the beginning of the production process, but I'm curious. What was the final product?
So here in the factory, a really broad range of cloth was produced for any kind of garments.
So basically for everyday use?
Yes, right. So here we are in the twining department. So on these machines, 2 or 3 threads are twisted together to form a very solid thread. And only with a solid thread you can weave. So this is the weaving hall with about 30 looms, electric looms. And what's very interesting is that these looms are processed by punched cards.
So an early computer.
Yes, an early computer, right. This is our finishing department, because after weaving, the cloth has to be finished. That means it has to be smoothened, it has to be softened, washed, dyed, and so on. All these processes you need for a really perfect cloth, which can be packed and shipped at the end. So this huge machine is way over 100 years old. It's our drying machine.
Otto Pfau, one of the two brothers who owned the factory after 1899, did not build a villa for himself on the Westberg. Instead, he built one here right on the premises where he moved in 1907. Did he want to show solidarity with his workers? Or did he just want to keep an eye on them? One way or another, it worked very well. Like the Pfau family, the workers remained very loyal to the factory, often across generations. Today, there are still 4 textile factories in Crimmitschau. Like this wonderful textile museum, they come from the past, live in the present, and look at the future. About 250 textile factories still remain in Saxony. They are specialized in premium products, but also on new high-tech applications. Where tradition and innovation come together, something great happens, again and again. Now it is time to commemorate a famous person who died exactly 175 years ago. 25 years ago, a very special museum dedicated to him was opened in Leipzig. 2 good reasons to celebrate. Welcome to the Mendelssohn Art Museum in Leipzig. Mendelssohn was a very talented artist specialized in watercolors, and his works can be found in many museums all over the world. Well, this actually could be a true story if Felix Mendelssohn had opted for a career as a painter instead of becoming a musician, composer and conductor. I'm actually in the Mendelssohn Museum in Leipzig. Mendelssohn spent the last 12 years of his life in what is known as the City of Music, and he lived and died in these rooms, way too young. Born in 1809 as the grandson of famous German Jewish philosopher Moses Mendelssohn, he was raised as a Calvinist by his parents, who converted to the Protestant faith too. They even added the Christian name Bartholdy to the family name. Nevertheless, a monument erected in Mendelssohn's honor in 1892 was destroyed by the Nazis, who still considered him to be a Jew. However, on the occasion of his 200th birthday in 2009, a faithful copy was put up right here next to St. Thomas's Church. In a letter, his mother described half-year-old Felix as a nice little guy. As an adult, he would send out many letters himself, beautifully written, of which more than 5,000 have survived. His musical talent became obvious at a very young age. He debuted as a piano player as a 9-year-old, composed his first symphony at the age of 12, and wrote his famous overture to A Midsummer Night's Dream when he was 17. Felix Mendelssohn had a great relationship with his sister Fanny, who was a gifted composer and musician herself. One floor of the Mendelssohn Museum is dedicated to her. After holding various musical posts in Berlin, Düsseldorf and Frankfurt, Mendelssohn came to Leipzig in 1835. Not only had he become one of the best piano and organ players in the world and a master of improvisation, he could also perform without sheet music and rewrite a score from memory. This park, on the banks of one of Leipzig's waterways, is dedicated to Mendelssohn. The bust was created after World War II to replace the destroyed Mendelssohn monument. But Mendelssohn did not come to Leipzig just to perform. He had been offered a permanent post as Kapellmeister or conductor of the Gewandhaus Orchestra. Founded in 1743, it performed in the former Clothmakers Guild Hall, hence the name Gewandhaus. Mendelssohn led the Gewandhaus Orchestra to world fame. His concerts were received with great enthusiasm, and his innovative leadership and conducting style were soon copied all over Europe. Today's Gewandhaus is the third venue of this name. The smaller of the two concert halls is named after Mendelssohn and has a modern statue from 1993 in the lobby. Opposite the Mendelssohn monument, Leipzig's first Bach monument can be found. It was erected with money and support from Mendelssohn in 1843. Johann Sebastian Bach had almost vanished into obscurity. With the performance of Bach's St. Matthew's Passion in 1841, Mendelssohn initiated a revival. Without him, Bach would have never gained the recognition and attention that he enjoys today. Johann Sebastian Bach spent the last 28 years of his life in Leipzig, and he is buried in St. Thomas Church, where Mendelssohn also performed regularly. Like Bach, he is commemorated there with a modern window. In 1843, Mendelssohn was made an honorary citizen of Leipzig. In the same year, he founded the Leipzig Conservatory, Germany's first music academy, which bears his name today. He brought in the best musicians from the Gewandhaus Orchestra as professors, and also his friend, composer Robert Schumann. As a composer, Mendelssohn already found fame in his early years. Schumann called him the Mozart of the 19th century, and in England, he even experienced a Mendelssohn mania. After his death, his work was discredited, often from an anti-Semitic stance. There was no need for such criticism, since Mendelssohn set very high standards for himself. After the first performance of one of his works, he would revise it and only then allow it to go public. During his lifetime, only 72 out of his more than 750 compositions were published. He even considered burning his often played Reformation Symphony. Luckily, it didn't happen. In the so-called Effektorium on the first floor, visitors of the Mendelssohn Museum can attempt to conduct one of the famous pieces by Mendelssohn for orchestra or for choir. Since the late summer of 1846, Mendelssohn lived in this apartment, his last in Leipzig, which now forms the second floor of the Mendelssohn Museum. Mendelssohn contributed greatly to the social life of the city, and he performed here in the music room. Very well documented, the apartment could be recreated. Concerts are held here regularly. Not only during the Leipzig Mendelssohn Festival, which is staged every fall by the Mendelssohn Museum and the Gewandhaus. Here, in his study, Mendelssohn composed, as a second oratory and last major work, a lyre, which debuted in Birmingham. Mendelssohn was a relentless traveler, visiting England alone 10 times. Having returned from his last trip across the Channel, he learned that his sister Fanny had died. Heartbroken and with little regard to his own health, Mendelssohn resumed his tough work schedule. After a series of strokes, he died on November 4th of the same year. Will he ever be forgotten? I don't think so. At least not as long as couples from all over the world get married to the sound of his famous wedding march. The last word on Mendelssohn shall be reserved for Kurt Masur, his later-day successor as Gewandhauskapellmeister, whose memory is also preserved by the Mendelssohn Museum. The meaning Mendelssohn gave to his life and how he led it should serve as an example to all in this day and age. It was a short but meaningful life, dedicated to compassion and harmony between human beings. Let us now take a brief look into what else is new and coming up in Saxony. Here's Sightgeist's Kaleidoscope. After 25 years of restoration, the famous Damascus Room is exhibited for the first time in Dresden's Japanese Palace, home of the Museum of Ethnology. Made around 1810, the intricate paneling once adorned the reception area of a house in Damascus. Since 1930, it has been owned by the Dresden State Art Collections. The town of Torgau will celebrate its 1050th anniversary in 2023. A former capital of Saxony and a major focal point of the Reformation Age events, it is also the place where American and Russian soldiers met for the first time at the end of World War II. Located on the Elbe River, Torgau has preserved its appearance from the Renaissance times. In January 2023, the 150th birthday of Melita Benz will be celebrated. Annoyed by the residue in her coffee, the Dresden housewife pierced holes into a tin can and lined it with her son's blotting paper. Thus, the coffee filter was invented, and her company Melita is still a major player in the coffee and household goods markets today. From May 11 to 29, 2023, the Gewandhaus Orchestra will host a Gustav Mahler Festival in Leipzig. It will be a unique opportunity to hear his complete symphonies and other orchestral works, interpreted by 10 world-class orchestras in the city where Mahler turned into a great composer. In May 2023, it will be 300 years since Johann Sebastian Bach was inaugurated as cantor of St. Thomas Church in Leipzig, which was his main profession until his death 27 years later. He created some of his best works in Saxony's largest city and is buried in the church's choir. The famous wine restaurant Vinzenz Richter in Meißen will celebrate its 150th anniversary in 2023. Located in the former Clothmakers Guild Hall from 1523, it is one of the most romantic places in Germany, and it's still family-owned today. In late 2023, the Puppet Theater collection of the Dresden State Art Collections will receive a new home in the Kraftwerk Mitte, a former power station. It is one of the largest collections of its kind, and a new presentation will do its status justice for the very first time. And now for something completely different. Saxony is a mountain biker's paradise. The southern half of Saxony is hilly to mountainous and offers beautiful nature. The Ore Mountains region is particularly suited for mountain biking. In 2014, the Stoneman Miriquidi was opened, which was a great achievement. But one person felt strongly that something was still missing, and with two like-minded others started a process that led to another exciting trail, inspired by the work of yet another person. Let's meet them all and find out all about it. This is Blockhausen. What sounds like the name of the village is actually the creation of a chainsaw artist, Andreas Martin, European champion of 2007. The name is derived from Blockhaus, which means log cabin. And log cabins and art is pretty much what sums up Blockhausen. Blockhausen was the inspiration for a special mountain biking trail, the Block Line. It was the brainchild of 3 people who will tell the story themselves.
My name is Veronika Hiebel and I am Managing Director of Saxony Tourism. When they came up with the wonderful idea several years ago of creating a fantastic new mountain biking trail in the region, the Block Line, I was still head of tourism in the Ore Mountains. I was immediately in favor of the idea and we tackled the project together with a group of enthusiastic volunteers.
I'm Tilman Sobek and I organize bike adventures. Our team was responsible, among others, for designing the route, for the graphic design, for the stories and experiences in connection with the Block Line.
Hello, I'm Iris. I'm Managing Director of the Berghotel Talblick, a hotel in Holzhau. I had the idea of creating the Block Line, which is why it starts and ends in Holzhau. The trail connects the entire eastern Ore Mountains region and is designed for families and active cyclists. It all started with the idea of turning the Ore Mountains into a mountain biking region, the 3rd largest in the world.
We already had plenty of mountain biking trails, so this one had to offer something different.
There was already a good plan for a trail which we first looked at and improved in many ways, but we soon realized that what we wanted was to capture people's imagination.
We didn't want another Stonement. We wanted something that is suited to families and active cyclists. And we wanted to link the entire Eastern Ore Mountains as an adventure holiday region.
The question was, what makes this region so special? Stoneman has the stones, but when it comes to mining, you needed wood. We are sitting here in Blockhausen where it is most apparent. The whole region boasts beautiful nature, but it also relied on forestry as a major branch of the economy for many years. Wood was used for mining, and that's also where the region gets its cultural wealth.
We want families and active cyclists to stay in the Ore Mountains a few days longer, so they can get to know the rest of the region and other attractions.
We now have 19 accommodation partners and hotels. We call them Block Line Inns, which is also part of our concept. They cater to families and fans of mountain biking. The trail has a total length of 140 kilometers, which ambitious sports enthusiasts can do in 1 to 2 days. But we have divided it into 15 stages, with the shortest being 2.5 to 3 kilometers, which can be combined in many different ways, for example on a 20-kilometer round tour.
And along the route there are all kinds of information points with activities for adults and for the children, large portals.
When you're traveling with children, you need to have highlights at regular intervals. That's why we have integrated puzzles, an adventure handbook, the chance to experience and discover the fauna and flora, and the cultural legacy of this region bit by bit.
The Ore Mountains has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2019, and you can also visit World Heritage Sites along the route.
All in the midst of wonderful nature.
Each year, chainsaw carvers from all over the world gather here in Blockhausen for a competition. The participants create large pieces from oak wood, which are put up on display afterwards. Every year there's a new theme. Speed carving also takes place, and the resulting pieces are auctioned off to the public, and the whole idea goes back to 2004 and Andreas Martin. And here's the man himself. Hello, Andreas.
What brings you to Blockhausen? The block line or the World Championship?
Both. It's wonderful to be here on a weekend when both are taking place at the same time.
Wo beides gleichzeitig passiert.
Yes, the block line brings an increasing number of people who ride past here, which is great.
A lot has changed since I last visited Blockhausen. Do you still have big plans?
I never run out of ideas. My wife always says my mind is as crazy as my hair. The big plan at the moment is to extend the playground.
That's great. I wish you all the best and continued success with Blockhausen and of course with the block line and a great weekend with the competition.
This is easily summed up. Fun and excitement for everyone. Here on the block line mountain bike trail. Another great way to explore the Orm Mountains, rightfully a UNESCO World Heritage Site. As you can see, even a nature experience in Saxony comes with a massive infusion of culture. That's what makes Saxony so special. After all, it is Germany's #1 cultural destination. Naturally. When Saxons talk Augustus, they normally refer to Augustus the Strong, Saxony's most splendid ruler from the Baroque age, whose real name was Frederick Augustus. However, there was an earlier Augustus who also ruled for more than 30 years and left his mark on Saxony. A strong-willed and hot-tempered man, Augustus brought peace and prosperity to his land. Like his later-day namesake, Augustus was very interested in architecture. In 1568, he laid the first stone for his biggest building project, a hunting castle, which he proudly named after himself. It was completed in 1572, exactly 450 years ago. The Moritz monument was originally installed at one of the bastions of Dresden's mighty fortifications. It shows the moment when the great Saxon ruler Moritz, or Morris, hands over the insignia of power to his brother Augustus. It never happened that way, because Moritz had already died in a battle 2 years earlier. However, it was important for Augustus to show that he was the legitimate heir of Moritz, who had become an elector, one of 7 rulers entitled to elect the German emperor. His were big shoes to fill, but Augustus was a tall man with large feet. Augustus was born in 1526. As the 3rd son of the ruler's brother, he was just another member of the royal family. But when George the Bearded died without an heir in 1539, his father, Henry the Pious, took over the reign, and Augustus moved into the first line. In 1548, he married Anna, daughter of Danish King Christian III. Even though it was an arranged marriage, it was a happy one, and Augustus and Anna were hardly ever separated during its 37-year run. They ruled Saxony with rigor, but also with great care, and they were affectionately known as Father Augustus and Mother Anna. In 1560, Augustus laid the foundations of what is called the Dresden art collections today. In the beginning, the focus was on technology, like scientific instruments, clocks, and other appliances, like these gardening tools. Augustus and Anna shared a passion for gardening. From 1577, they made it mandatory for newlyweds to plant fruit trees after their wedding as a contribution to better nutrition. This law was then copied by many other rulers. Augustus was a hands-on ruler, literally. He was a master at ivory turning. All in all, he left about 165 pieces behind, some of which are on display here at the Greenwald Treasury Museum. His brother Moritz had already started to rebuild Dresden Castle into a much more representative palace. Augustus was very happy to complete the project, given that he was very interested in architecture, and this was only the beginning of his construction activities. Since hunting was another passion of Augustus, he had a number of hunting castles built across Saxony. For his crowning achievement, Augustusburg Castle, he probably submitted the first designs himself. Full of the spirit of the Renaissance age, it features a strict geometrical layout, executed with precision and clarity. Few other buildings in Europe are comparable to this monumental structure, which was built as a symbol of Augustus's power and the peace that he brought to the land. Augustus put his masterful court painter Heinrich Göding in charge of the decoration. The artist even managed to sneak in a portrait of himself here at the Venus Hall. When the castle was renovated in the 18th century, these rooms were downgraded to become part of the attic. Thus, the beautiful artwork survived, which is unique in the German-speaking world. Augustus and Anna were raised as Protestants. Ruling over the motherland of the Reformation, they established a Lutheran state church. They showed a lot of devotion, but very little tolerance. The chapel of Augustusburg Castle was one of the first newly built Protestant churches. The altarpiece was created by Lucas Cranach the Younger, and the proclamation of the Lutheran faith. Augustus is shown here on the left with the 8 sons, while Anna stands on the right with their 6 daughters. 9 of these children had already died when this painting was completed. Sitting on top of the Schellenberg mountain, and commonly referred to as the crown of the Ore Mountains, Augustusburg Castle faced a serious problem. Water was in short supply. But Augustus brought in Saxon miners to dig a well. They had to walk their way through 136 meters of hard rock, and it took them 7 years to complete that task. Today's technology is from the year 1831, and it's still in perfect working order. Augustus ate only twice a day, at 10 in the morning and at 5 in the afternoon. What sounds like an early form of intermittent fasting actually still added up to a substantial feast, with each meal consisting of up to 21 different dishes. Table culture had changed a lot since the Middle Ages. Decorations had become important. Dishes were served in a particular order. Every person had his own plate, and a fork was used instead of a spoon. But most importantly, hands were washed before the meal. Like in many other areas, Augustus and Anna put a lot of effort into organizing everything down to the last detail. Augustus was so proud of the castle bearing his name that he wanted a German emperor to see what he had created. Unfortunately, he never found the time. Maybe he had also heard that Augustus was not a frequent visitor himself. It is said that he found Augustusburg Castle to be a rather cold place. In 1585, Anna died, and Augustus followed her to the grave in Freiburg Cathedral just a few months later, leaving behind a great legacy and this masterpiece of Renaissance architecture, built 450 years ago. Augustus' successors, his son and his grandsons, were not cast in the same mold, and they were also way too fond of drinking. Thus, the rule of Augustus still stands out today, as does the castle bearing his name. I'm sure that most of you know what Stollen is. Stollen is a famous Christmas cake from Germany, you say. But wait a minute. If you want the real thing, you have to buy a Stollen made in Dresden. And it is only genuine if it comes with a golden seal, depicting the statue of Augustus the Strong as the Golden Rider. Big, bigger, biggest. Saxony's most splendid ruler, Augustus the Strong, wouldn't have settled for less. In 1730, he paraded his reorganized and re-equipped army of 27,000 soldiers in front of illustrious guests in Sightgeist, the extravaganza of the century. The highlight was the presentation of a gigantic Stollen. Dresden baker Andreas Zacharias managed to bake this delicacy in an oven specially made for him by Matthäus Daniel Pöppelmann, the architect of the Dresden Zwinger. It weighed 1.8 tons, was 7 meters long and 3 meters wide. A Christmas cake in June? Well, the guests loved it so much that it is said that some of them took one of the 24,000 pieces home as a souvenir. It is no coincidence that a Dresden baker was called in to create the gigantic Stollen. Originally, Stollen was a rather dry affair, consisting only of flour, rapeseed oil and water. Since the Dresdners didn't like that, the Saxon rulers petitioned the Pope. Finally, in the year 1491, with the so-called Dresden butter letter, he granted them the right to add butter. And Dresden Stollen got richer and richer since other ingredients were added as well. But what's the secret of a Dresden Stollen? I'm at the Wippler Bakery in Dresden-Pillnitz to find out how to make a genuine one. My guru today is Master Baker Andreas Wippler. Hello, Andreas.
Hello, pleased to meet you.
Andreas, I know Dresden Stollen has only certain ingredients. Could you explain about them? I, of course, already know about the butter.
Yes, of course. Butter is the most important ingredient. Then sultanas, almonds in this sweet version, and bitter almonds as the counterpart. Candied lemon peel and candied orange peel. For a fresh touch we have some grated lemon and orange peel, not to forget the sugar, which is normal granulated sugar, and finally salt and our secret Stollen spice mix. We start off with milk, flour and yeast. That's rum, which is added to the sultanas one day before and gives the Stollen its aroma and moistness.
how much is this?
It's 4 pounds or 2 kilos. That's what a real Stollen weighs.
So, what now?
The final act, so to speak, before we put the Stollen in the oven is to cut it so that it can rise as it bakes.
When do you start with Stollen baking in the year?
We always start baking Stollen here in Whippler Bakery at the beginning or middle of October.
Okay, let's put it in then. Oh, looks good.
Fine.
So, are we done?
After the Stollen has come out of the oven, we leave it to cool down, and once it is cool, it is buttered and powdered.
Thinking of baking a Dresden Stollen, or in German Dresdner Christstollen yourself? You can't. Dresdner Christstollen is patented and trademarked, and it can only be produced in the Dresden region. There's even an association which watches over this. Caroline Marschalek is the managing director of the Dresden Stollen Association. So, Caro, what makes Dresden Stollen so special that it is protected?
The Dresdner Christstollen brings people together, not only at Christmas tables all over the world, but also here in Dresden. Since 1991, the Dresden Stollen Association represents the interests of the Stollen bakers in Dresden area. And as you know, Dresdner Christstollen only genuine with the seal.
Now it is time to enjoy a piece of Stollen.
Oh, Wolfgang, it's not called piece, it's a slice.
Okay, then let me put the Stollen on this plate here and cut off a slice.
Stop, stop, stop! Wolfgang, Stollen is never cut on a plate, it's served and cut on a board. Wolfgang, stop, one moment. We have to use the original Stollenmesser.
Okay, I will use the Stollen knife then. Let me start with a small piece.
Stop, 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 stop. A Stollen is never cut at the end. It's every time cut in the center.
So many rules. Now it is cut. And here's a cake fork. I am ready to eat.
Wolfgang, stop, stop, stop. Stollen is never eaten with a fork. You have to use your fingers. It's a traditional Saxony finger food.
Oh, okay. And action. Delicious. Since 1993, the Dresden Stollen Festival has been part of the Striezelmarkt, Germany's oldest Christmas market. With reference to Augustus the Strong, every year a gigantic Stollen is produced by the Dresden Stollen bakers and paraded through the streets of Dresden. Also every year a young lady is elected Dresdner Stollenmädchen or Dresden Stollen Girl, who is a brand ambassador for Dresdner Stollen all around the world. After all, it is exported to many countries. I think I will see Dresdner Stollen with different eyes now. It's not only a cake, it's a living tradition and a cultural treasure.
It really is.
The Dresden bakers are passionate about their Stollen became already obvious in the year 1615 when they attacked competitors from nearby Siebenlehen. After the 30 Years' War, they were granted a monopoly on Stollen by the Saxon rulers and became purveyors of the court. So, Dresden Stollen has been a royal delicacy for many centuries. I would like to thank everyone involved in this presentation and you for tuning in. Do not miss the Sightgeist video advent calendar in December and join me again for the special edition of Sightgeist, the Saxony magazine, on the Via Romantica, a circular route to romantic places in Saxony. See you soon and have a lovely day.